Hello, today I'm going to talk to you about posture. The last few months I've had a lot of clients that have come with postural problems, and particularly when they've had to work from home for the first time or the workload has increased a lot. So posture is really important to get right because you can keep yourself out of a lot of pain if you just have a few things that you bear in mind. And first of all, we need to talk about how to sit properly. So I'm just going to show you this skeleton here. So when you sit down, you've got to sit on your sitting bones, which are these things here. And if I just bring this a bit closer so you can see, you need to sit right up on top of these bones and be very careful not to roll behind them. A lot of people do this. You end up sitting and putting all your weight on this part of the bone, which is just behind. And that's when you end up slouching your back because your whole, if you imagine, if you're putting your weight like that, then to avoid falling over backwards, you end up slumping your spine this way. Basically what that does is it squashes all sorts of things that don't like to be squashed, and you end up with lower back pain, leg pain, and pain going up your spine. So it's very important, first off, to find those sitting bones. And to do that, when you sit down, if you just sit on your hands to begin with, and you can feel the bones, they're the bits that you can feel sticking out that you're sitting on, and just rock slightly on top of those bones, back and forth, and then side to side. And they'll be the pivot that you're rocking on. And you just get a little bit more used to feeling what it's like. If you're not used to sitting top of them, it might feel like you're perching and feel a bit weird, but that doesn't last for long. Give it a few days, trying to adjust it as often as you can remember, and it will feel more normal. And once you're right up on top of those bones, you can actually sit for quite a long time, although it's not a good idea to do that, but you can sit for a long time and not feel any pain at all. So that's quite crucial. And the other thing about it is when you're on top of those bones, you actually don't need any form of backrest, because as soon as you start leaning back against something, however supposedly well designed it is, you're coming off those sitting bones and you're sliding round onto the bit that makes you slump. So in actual fact, a sort of a stool or a ball or something like that is much better to sit on than any sort of chair with a back. Okay, so I've got Jess here to help demonstrate how to sit well at a desk. So as she is at the moment, this is, as you can see, not great posture. So she's crossing her legs and she's got a slight slump in her lower back. And in order to avoid this, obviously you need to uncross your legs to begin with, and you need to get up onto your sitting bones like I've just been talking about, so just like that. So then we've got a nice straight spine all the way up to the neck. And the other important thing is you need to have everything at the right height. So the screen that you're looking at, the top of the screen needs to be level with your eyes. So when you're actually looking at the entire screen, it's slightly below your eye level. And particularly when you're using a laptop, you're going to need a separate keyboard, because then obviously it's going to be too high for you then to be able to type. So you need to have your keyboard set at an angle where your forearm is parallel to the desk and to the ground, and you're not having to bend your wrist at all. You can keep your wrist nice and straight. And in order to do that, you need the keyboard directly in front of you, not off to one side, and the screen directly in front of you. So you can just raise it with some books and be nice and parallel to your shoulders, so your face onto the screen. Does that make sense? The other thing to think about is the height of your legs. So with the stool adjusted to the right height for the desk, Jess, her legs are now too low down. So what you can do is you can get some books and just pop them underneath the feet. And that just makes it all a bit more comfortable. So Jess's knees are slightly below her hips, but not much. It's more or less parallel. So that's a nice angle to be. That will be comfortable for quite some time to sit in. And the other thing to talk about is elbows. They need to be kept tucked into your waist, not particularly if you use a mouse. Don't have your elbow right out to one side or something like that. You need it nicely tucked in, and that's not putting anything under any strain as well. And the other thing is the neck. So all this is looking good, and when you're sitting correctly, the back of your neck will be nice and long, and your chin will be just tucked in ever so slightly, so that this is the high part of your head and not the front bit. As soon as you start leaning forwards, then you end up with a sort of forward head posture and a lot of neck pain. And I've got a picture here to show you, a couple of pictures actually, to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So this is the high part of the head, and if you imagine there's a rope pulling you up from above, it's coming from the crown of the head, not from the front, which a lot of people make the mistake of thinking. It comes from this part. So when you're sitting, this should be a nice long straight line all the way down the back of the neck. Just imagine the back of the neck lengthening, and that keeps your neck comfortable. This, I've got another picture here, is an example of good and bad posture. So there we have the good posture with a nice straight line from the top of the head. Often when you get engrossed in your work, you end up leaning forwards into the screen and you start to look like this, and the weight of the head gets shifted forward off the shoulders, and you can end up in extreme circumstances like this. And every time the head shifts forward, it magnifies the load that is then carried on your neck and shoulders. So it gets heavier and heavier, and people end up with quite a lot of pain and dysfunction all around here. So that just shows you how important it is just to be mindful of where your head is on top of your shoulders. Okay, so now I'm just going to quickly mention about standing desks. A lot of people have asked me if they're better or worse than sitting desks, and it all very much depends on your standing posture. So it's pretty similar to sitting in that you need to think about the desk height. So obviously we don't have a standing desk here, we're going to have an imaginary one, but the standing desk needs to be about the height of your forearm when it's parallel to the floor, so that you can comfortably hold your arm up and have your wrist straight, and you can let your fingers just drop just like this, like Jess is showing you here. The other thing to think about is, as we've already mentioned, to have your head in the right position up on top of your shoulders, so that the back of the neck is nice and long. And the other thing is not to have your knees locked. So you need to have your just nice and soft knees, just not bent, but just bouncy. And the other thing that a lot of people do is they, particularly when you looking at a screen for a long time, you tend to lean into it. And if you do that when you're standing, you'll shift your weight onto the balls of your feet more than the heel. And when that happens, you end up kind of moving your whole body forward, and you often counterbalance by overarching your lower back, which will obviously lead to pain long term. So you need to shift your weight backwards slightly. If you think of your feet as having 3 points of a triangle, and here's a picture to show you what I'm talking about. So you need to have equal weight here, here and here. And when you've got it all over the triangle like that, then you're in a good standing position. And that's it. Okay, so I hope all that was useful to you. There was a couple of things I wanted to add right at the end. Firstly is movement. It's really, really important to move as much as possible. Our bodies aren't designed to sit still for a long period of time. And generally, it's recommended every 20 minutes to try and move. So, you know, you might want to set an alarm or something like that. And even if you don't move for very long, just literally get up out of your stool or your chair and do a stretch or a bend, run up and down the stairs or whatever it is, and you'll feel loads better. The other thing I wanted to mention is posture correctors, which several people have asked me about recently. And I would say, if at all possible, to avoid them, because what they tend to do is they encourage the naturally supporting areas of your body to get weak, which is obviously not a good idea. All you need to do is think about the few basic alignments, the position of the head on top of the shoulders, the position of your sitting bones if you sit down, and your feet. So if you just think about those three sections of your body, everything else tends to fall into place, and you won't need any kind of external correctors. So and once you're sitting in a good alignment, your body will naturally strengthen the bits that it needs to keep strong. So I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you again soon.